Hello everybody, my name is Sef Townsend, and I'm telling stories on World Storytelling Cafe. It's a place where storytellers from all over the world, from the States, from Colombia, from Europe, from Britain, from Ireland, have come together to share stories at a time when we can't get out to tell them in the places where we normally do. And those places are schools and clubs and hospitals and prisons and festivals. And because we're not doing that, we're not earning any money. But we want to tell our stories and, if possible, maybe earn a few coins if we can do. And there is a chance for people, if they do like the stories, to drop a coin into the hat, which is below below the screen here. Don't worry if you don't want to drop anything in. Just enjoy the stories. But it's a way for people to gather a little bit in this hard time. It's hard for all of us. But it's a time when sometimes stories can make us feel a little bit better. And I'd like to share two or three of my favourite stories. So here we go. And the first story is from Iran. Now, I was going to say that I tried to get to Iran one day, but there was a war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I was in Armenia and they wouldn't let me in. So I didn't hear the stories firsthand, but friends in Armenia and friends in the UK have told me quite a few stories, and this is one of my favourites. And it's a story which has a lot of familiarity with people who know stories here well, wherever you are. It's a familiar story tucked into another story which you might not know much about. There was a poor woman, and because she was poor, she didn't have much to eat. She had a husband, she had a baby, and usually they would have a bowl of rice at night. But to make the food taste a little better, she would go and gather herbs and gather berries, and she would add them to make the food taste better. And one day she came across a garden with a wall, but the wall was broken down and you could walk across most of it. And in the middle there was a house, a strange house, also broken down like the wall. It had no door and no windows on the ground floor, but on the first upper floor there were windows, broken and dirty. And she thought, well, nobody lives here, nobody looks after this garden, and look at these fig trees. All the fruit is dropping and rotting on the ground, but there are some fresh figs. Maybe I could take some, and it would make our evening meal even better. And so she leant down to pick up one of the figs, and just as she touched the figs, rema jima ta tiki day, there was a horrible, horrible old witch-type hag woman with a pointy nose that came down here and a pointy chin that came down here. And on her nose she had 1, 2, 3 big black warts. And on her chin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 long scars. You will pay me for those figs. But I don't have anything. I don't have anything to give you. All I've got in the world is a cooking pot and a husband and a little baby daughter. Then I shall have your baby daughter. No, you can't have that. You can't have my baby. At that point, she fell down in a faint. She was so troubled by the witch saying that she would take her daughter. And when she woke up, she seemed to be at home. And she thought, oh dear, that was a terrible dream. But then she saw the figs that she'd collected on the kitchen table. But they ate the figs and ate the rice, and the next day came, and the next day went, and the next day came, and the next day went, until time passed, and she never thought about the old witch woman again, because she was busy with her family. And she looked after her little baby, who was called Gulu Behar, and the little baby became the little girl who was still called Gulu Behar. And by the time Gulu Behar was 15 years old, still a child, she liked to play with her friends, she was still called Gulu Behar because she was probably the most beautiful girl in the whole village, in the whole province. And her name Gulu Behar reflected how beautiful she was, because Gul in Farsi means flower, and Bahar means springtime, and so her name meant flower of spring. And she was as lovely a personality as she was in her own beauty. She was a beautiful girl, but she still liked playing with her friends, and they would go playing hide and seek. They would go to the fields, and they would play in the meadows where there were beautiful spring flowers. And this is what she was doing one day. She was looking for her friends, coming, ready or not, trying to find them. And she came into the meadow, and she saw a butterfly, a big butterfly, with strange markings. On its top wings, it had 1, 2, 3 black dots. And on the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 long stripes, long marks. But it was a butterfly, and the butterfly was flying, and Gulu Behar said, "If only I could touch you." And she reached out to touch the butterfly, at which point, "Ha! Rimajima, Rimajima, ta-ti-ki-ti! I've come to take you, Gulu Behar." "How do you know my name?" "I know your name. I know your name because your mother promised that she would give you to me after she stole those figs. And now you're 15, I've come to collect you." And the old hag got onto her broomstick, and she held Gulu Behar behind her, and they flew through the air and came into the window of that very same broken down old house. And there she was. "Now, Gulu Behar, you can knit for me. And don't worry, don't think I have kidnapped you. You were here because your mother promised me that you would be the payment for the figs that she stole. And now, what I want you to do is knit. Those are some knitting needles. There's some yarn. Off you go." And Gulu Behar every day had to knit with the yarn that was given her. And she would knit, and she'd knit, and she'd knit, and she'd knit. And the witch would go out of the window to get some food for herself. But for Gulu Behar, she gave her some old dry rice, cooked but dried up, and a few figs, and Gulu Behar had to knit. And Gulu Behar had to do 3 things that the old woman had told her. And the old woman said, "You must never look into the chest under the stairs, okay?" "Yes, Grandma." It wasn't her grandma, but that's the way you address somebody who is older than you, Grandma or Grandpa, in Iran. "And you must never look into the window, into the mirror on the wall, okay?" "Yes, Grandma." "And the 3rd thing, you must never look out of the window when I'm out, okay?" "Yes, Grandma." "Now, I'm going out to get food, as usual." And off she flew. Every time she came back, she would say, "Gulu Behar, Gulu Behar, sweet and fair, Granny's coming, let down your hair." And so Gulu Behar would let down her hair, and the witch would climb up her hair and come into the room and say, "Gulu Behar, have you done anything that you shouldn't do?" "No, Grandma." Well, on this day, when the witch went away, Grandma kept saying, "Have you done anything you shouldn't do?" And Gulu Behar thought, well, maybe I should look at those things I wasn't supposed to do. And on this day, she went under the stairs. She opened the chest, and all that was there was 3 balls of wool, a green one, a blue one, and a red one. Is that all? I'm not supposed to look at that. And she put down the chest. Gulu Behar, sweet and fair, Gran is coming, let down your hair. She let down the hair. The old woman came. Have you done anything you shouldn't? Oh, no, Grandma. The next day the same. On this day, Gulu Behar looked into the mirror on the wall. And when she looked into the mirror, she didn't see her own face. She saw another face which said, don't be scared, Gulu Behar, because the witch's power is contained in those 3 balls of yarn, those 3 balls of wool in the chest under the stairs. Did you do anything wrong, Gulu Behar? No. But on the 3rd day, the witch had gone out, and Gulu Behar looked out of the window. And there she saw all the things she'd forgotten about, all the lovely things, the people coming and going, the donkeys, the carts, people buying, people selling, people on the street. And she saw on the other side of the street a beautiful young man dressed in very elegant clothes. Very elegant clothes indeed. And she looked at him, and he looked at her. And he walked across the street, and down below he said, Gulu Behar, sweet and fair, someone's coming, let down your hair. Which is what she did. She let down her hair, and the young man climbed up, and when he got into the room, he looked at her, she looked at him, and there was an instant attraction. She told him everything that had happened to her. And he said, I'll bring my father here with his army. We'll tear down this place and rescue you. And they were making plans for how to rescue Gulu Behar. When they heard, Gulu Behar, sweet and fair, Gran is coming, let down your hair. Suddenly, Gulu Behar had to think quickly. Now, in the time that she'd been incarcerated, imprisoned in this place, she'd learned a few tricks from her grandmother. It wasn't her grandmother, that's just the way that people addressed each other in those days, even today in Iran. And she learned how to change one thing into another, but she'd never tried it on a human being before. But now is the time. She was going to have to get her grandmother up there, and so she made a spell and turned the young prince into a beautiful scarf, into a shawl, which she hung on a nail on the wall. She let down her hair, and the old woman came up. You've been doing something wrong, haven't you? Can I smell another human in this place? Can I? Oh, no, Grandma, no. It's just maybe I've been working so hard. And, look, I made you a scarf. It's a shawl. And she showed the old woman the shawl, which actually wasn't really a shawl. Oh, yes, well, very nice. Okay, put it back on the wall. And Gulu Behar put it back onto the nail on the wall. Next day, the old woman went out, and the young man was turned back into the young man. The scarf was turned into the young man by Gulu Behar. And he said, I've noticed, I can see there are lots and lots of long scarves here, long things that you've been knitting. Let's tie them all together, and we can climb down outside and escape. And they were just planning that when they heard, Gulu Behar, sweet and fair. She had to turn once more into the scarf, and this happened 3 times. And so as soon as the old woman went out this time, as soon as she went out, they'd already got their plan going. They tied those scarves together, and they climbed down, and he got onto his horse, and they galloped away. The old woman came back. Gulu Behar, sweet and fair, Granny's coming, let down your... And she got there. Gulu Behar, let down your... Well, she didn't need the hare to be let down. She flew into the room and had a look to see where Gulu Behar was, and she picked up her shoe, and she put water in her shoe, and she looked into that shoe, and she could see in the water in that shoe everything that was happening. The prince and Gulu Behar galloping away. So she got onto her broomstick and she flew through the air. The prince and Gulu Behar were galloping and galloping and galloping, but the old witch just about to get hold of the tail of the horse, when the prince said, Gulu Behar, throw one of those balls of wool behind you. And Gulu Behar picked up the green ball of wool and she threw it behind her, and a huge thicket of thorns came up behind her, and the witch had to push her way through. She scratched her face and tore her clothes, but she came out the other side. And there they were, the prince and Gulu Behar, galloping, 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 galloping. But the witch on her broomstick came and was just about to grab hold of the horse's tail. Throw another one behind you, said the prince, and she picked up the blue one. She threw it over her shoulder, and a whole lake, a huge lake, appeared behind them, and they could gallop on. But the witch, she drank all of that water inside her, and once more she was on her broomstick, and they were galloping, 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 and the witch this time got hold of the horse's tail. Quick, throw the last one behind you. And the last one was the red one. And as she threw it, it burst into an conflagration, huge flames everywhere, and the witch was burnt completely until she was a little pile of ashes on the ground. And Gulu Behar and the prince, they turned back, and he said, will you come and be my bride? And she said, when I'm old enough, but please come and meet my mother and father. And that is what happened. The prince went back and met Gulu Behar's mother and father, and it was agreed that they could live. And of course, they lived happily ever after. And that's the story of Gulu Behar and the witch, and you probably recognize it from many other European stories. Where did the story start? Was it originally an Iranian story, or where did it start? That's the thing with stories. And I'd like to tell another of my favorite stories, which comes from Africa. And some African stories have counterparts in Europe, but some are really quite special and particular and are very much of Africa. Let me just have a swig of tea. And this story is from Tanzania, from the Chaga people who live close to the great mountain of Kilimanjaro. And I've heard various versions of this. But this version, it's very much influenced by a wonderful storyteller called Jan Blake, a friend of mine, who said I could tell it. And so I love this story, and I'd like to tell it to you today. In a village of the Chaga people, close to the mountain of Kilimanjaro, there lived a young woman. She was a widow. She was very young, and she was a widow. But before her husband died, they'd had no children. And so she had no children to love. But she would be very friendly with all the children in the village. But every time before she went to work to grow her calabashes in the fields, she would pray to the great spirits of Mount Kilimanjaro. And she would say, oh, great spirits, thank you very much for my house, my little round mud hut with its thatched roof, with the wooden rafters that hold the roof together. I'm so happy that I have this in my life. And thank you for my calabash patch. And thank you for all the good things. And could you send me a child to love? Because I'm lonely. I would be a great mother. I'm strong and I'm young. And then she would go to work. And she would go down to her calabash patch. And she would grow her little calabashes on the vine. Here's a little calabash. Oh. Some of them she sold in the market. She would sell them and they'd be turned into spoons, or they would be turned into bowls, or they would be turned into shika-chika, musical instruments. But she didn't make much money, but just enough to keep her getting some food and to survive. Well, the children, they liked her too, the children from the village. And they would come and they would say, hello, can we play in your compound, in the big yard outside her mud hut? Yes, of course you could play, dear children. And she loved to hear the laughter of the children. It was great. Every day before she went to work, thank you for all the things that you send to me, O great spirit of Kilimanjaro. Thank you for the children who come and play in my yard, and for my house, and for my calabash patch. And I would love to have a child of my own, a baby that I could love. And off she would go. And every day this would happen. Now, it happened that one day, some of the women in the village, they said, why didn't she have a baby? Why hasn't she got any children? Why is she cursed? Why is it? I don't know. Maybe she's something wrong with her. Maybe we should stop our children going and playing in her yard. And that's what happened. And when she came back from her fields, it was quiet. There were no children. But she had her evening meal. It didn't feel quite the same. And in the morning, she still didn't hear children. They were taken away from her, kept away from her. But she said her prayers. Oh, great spirit of Kilimanjaro, thank you. Thank you for all the good things that I have. Thank you for my house, my calabash patch. Thank you for Thank you for everything you sent to me. And please, could you send me a child to love so I have a child to love? And off she went. Now the great spirit, or the spirits, maybe there's more than one, they had a think. And one was talking to the other. Shall we send her some good luck? She's had a lot of hard luck. Her husband died. Children don't come to play with her. Yes. We'll send her some good luck. And so good luck was sent down from the great high mountain, down to the village, down to her calabash patch. And as she arrived at her calabash patch, she found 5 big calabashes, much bigger than this one. This is a big one, but these were very big. There were 5. There was 1, 2, 3, 4 beautiful sized one, and a bigger one that actually was, I'll just get this one. It was just as good as the others, except it had a little hole or a crack in the side. And when she got them home, she thought, well, I need to dry them. I'll put this one up in the rafters and that one, and she put the 4 normal ones into the rafters that held up her little thatched roof. But the other one was too big to go up there to dry out, so she put it by the fire in the middle of the hut, which is what you find in African houses. And the smoke burns up and goes through a hole in the roof. And she next morning said, thank you so much, thank you. You sent me this good luck. I can dry these calabashes. I can cut them and sell them as big pots for rice or fufu, and I will make more money. I can buy some beautiful cloth for a wraparound or a head wrap. Oh, and thank you so much. Thank you for my little hut. Thank you for my calabash patch, for the new calabashes. And please, now that I've got all this good luck, I could share it with a little child. If you could send me a child to love. And off she went to work. As soon as she'd gone, up in the rafters there was a cracking sound. And there was a voice, "Ketete, ketete, let us down from the rafters." And the one by the fire, it opened. And out of it, a beautiful young boy, strong as anything, apart from his thigh, where the crack was in the calabash. So he had a thigh, and he couldn't walk as well as everyone else. But he got up and he took down one of the calabashes, and in the calabash was a little sister. "There you are, my sister," and a little brother, and another bigger sister, and a bigger brother. "Let's clean and cook for our mother." And so they started cleaning, and so they started cooking, and as they cleaned and as they cooked, they sang, "Kota kosa sarawa, 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 clean and cook, cook and clean. Kota kosa sarawa, 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 clean and cook, cook and clean." And they cleaned that whole house and the whole compound until it was spotless. And they made a big bowl of stew and a big bowl of fufu, which goes with the stew and is delicious. And the time came when, "Quick, our mother's coming back. Put us back into the rafters, Ketete." So Ketete, with his poor old limp, he limped and he put his little sister, his little brother, his bigger sister, and he got into his little calabash. And he turned once more into a calabash. Well, as our young woman was coming home, she smelt the delicious smell of stew. And she thought, "Oh, no, it's not coming from my house. Oh, it's not coming from..." But the closer she got to her house, it was delicious. It was coming from her house. And she went into the house, and there she saw a big bowl of stew and a big bowl of fufu. And she tasted the stew. Delicious, with just the right amount of pepper. Oh, and she ate the food and ate the stew. And she thought, "My neighbours, they must have sent their children to bring me food. I'm going over to ask them and to thank them so much for this wonderful thing." And she went over to her neighbours, and she went to the door. And in Africa, you don't knock, knock, knock. You go, "Coco, Coco." And she said, "Coco, Coco." And the next neighbour came and opened the curtain on her. "Yes, what do you want?" "Oh, I just came to thank you for the food that you've brought, or your children." "Food that we brought? My children brought? I don't think so." So she went to the other house. "Oh, I've had some food delivered at my house, and I wondered if you or your children had brought it." "My children come to your house? I don't think so. No." So she went home, and the next morning when she set off, she said the same prayers. And she was so thankful for the food, and so thankful for the cleaning of the house. And still she said, "I am strong, I am young, please send me a child with all the goodness that you're sending to me. You're sending me so much good. I think the next thing will be that child." And off she went. And the same thing happened. "Ketete, bring us down from the rafters. Kota kosa sarawa, 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 clean and cook, cook and cook, quick. Our mother's coming back." And they do. And they were back as calabashes in the rafters. The woman was very, very puzzled by this, but nevertheless, a delicious, different tasting stew this time. And just the right amount of pepper. Oh, delicious. The next morning when she got up, she said her prayers. And she said, as she left, thank you for all the goodness. And now I'm going out. I'm going to be away a long time. And she left the house. But instead of going down to the calabash patch, she went around the house to the back of the house where there was a crack in the mud. And she looked through the crack in that mud as a voice happened. Ketete, bring us down from the rafters. And Ketete, with his limp, he brought down his little sister, his little brother, his bigger sister, and they all started. Kota kosa sarwa, 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 clean and cook. And the young woman walked around to the door and she said, my children. Oh, they were shocked. You shouldn't have seen us. We just had to do this because this is what we do, because we wanted to do things for you and we weren't sure. You shouldn't. Don't go back into your calabashes. Stay. Be my children. Be my calabash children. I can love you and you can continue being the lovely family you are. And the big one, Ketete, talked to his little brother and his little sister and his big sister. We agree. We will stay and be your family. And she opened her arms, and the little one sat on this knee, and the little boy sat on this knee, and the little girl put her head on that shoulder, and the little boy put his head under her arm, and Ketete came and stood behind her, and they were a family, and everyone was happy. And you might think the story ends there, but there's a little more. Time passed. Everyone was happy. And now the neighbours were talking to her because she had children. And she decided that she would have a party. We're going to make a big feast. We're going to cook a big pot of stew. We're going to clean the house and invite all the friends. And that's what we will do. And so all the children were cleaning and all the children were scrubbing and everything was happening to make a party. But because Ketete had a bad hip, he was told that he could stay and keep the fire hot. He could stoke the fire, put wood on the fire, and that is what he did. But as he did it, because his hip hurt, he couldn't sit normally with cross-legged like everyone else, and so he stretched his leg out. That's better. And his mother came and she said, oh, Ketete, put your leg back. Somebody might trip over it. Okay, mother. And he put his leg back into the cross-leg position and stoked the fire. Ooh, but his leg hurt, so he stretched it out again. That's better. And he stoked the fire. Ketete, be careful. Put your leg back. No, somebody's going to slip over it. Oh, yes, mother. And he put his leg back. But now it hurt too much. And he stoked the fire and he put out his leg just at the moment that his mother was bringing a big pot of stew. And she tripped over his leg and the stew went everywhere. And she said, you stupid boy, I told you not to put out your leg. You're a stupid child. Anyway, you're only a calabash child. Ketete put us back in the rafters. And Ketete stood up with his limp, and he put his little sister and his big sister and his big brother and his little brother. He got into his calabash and it closed around him. And after all the excitement of preparing for a party and singing and laughing, there was silence. What have I done? What have I done? Sorry, I'm just looking. What have I done? Oh, And the next morning, in her prayers, she said, "Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. I'm sorry what I did. Please, please send them back." And the gods, the spirits, they talked. Shall we send them? Shall we give her the children back? Should she have it? And some said no, and some said yes, and some said she was a bad mother talking to them like that. And others said, well, you see, she'd never been a mother before, and now she had 5 children. And we all lose our temper sometimes. We don't mean it. And it was decided that the children would be able to come back. She came back to the home, and for a few days now, she hadn't had any food made for her. She smelled the delicious smell of stew. And she thought, no, it's coming from the neighbours. And she went, quick, hide. And so the children hid behind the hut. And she came up the path, and she went into the house. And there was a bowl of stew, with just the right amount of pepper. And there was a bowl of fufu, delicious and plain, to go with the tasty stew. And she looked around, and there were no children there. But she thought that they were playing the same trick on her as she played on them. And she sat on her chair, when appearing in the door were 4 beautiful bonny children and a big, beautiful bonny boy with a little limp. And they ran towards her, saying, "Mother." And the little one sat on this knee, the little daughter. And the little brother sat there. And the biggest girl put her head on this shoulder. And the big boy put his head under that arm. And Ketete limped over to his loving mother and stood behind them. And she said, "You are my children, and always will be." And that is the story of the Calabash children. So, time for another little story. Let me see, have we got time? Let me see, I don't know whether I have. I think my next story is long. So maybe I will end with a song. And the song that I'll end with is something that people really like. Oh, I did it last time. I can't do that again. What can I do? I'm just thinking of the song that I can sing. Oh, it goes like this. Yes. It's something that people sing quite a lot around the world with lots of different words. But I heard this from a Moroccan person. And if our Moroccan friends can tell me whether you know it or not, it will be great. It goes like this. Arum sasa, gali 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 rum sasa, arum sasa, gali 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 rum sasa, urami, gali 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 rum sasa, urami, gali 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 rum sasa. A big red bus, mini, and a big red bus, a big red bus, mini, and a big red bus, Ferrari, mini, and a big red bus, Ferrari, mini, and a big red bus. Arum sasa, gali 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 rum sasa, arum sasa, gali 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 rum sasa, Ferrari, urami, gali 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 rum sasa. So I hope you enjoyed those stories. We had one story from Iran, and we had a story from Tanzania, Kilimanjaro. I thought I'd tell 3, but they were a little bit long. I hope you enjoyed them. And I hope you're able to look at some of the other storytellers. If you look at the list, there are many storytellers, and they're telling wonderful stories from around the world. And remember, if you do want to contribute, there's a little hat below. It's been lovely telling stories with you, and I hope to see you again. Bye now. Bye-bye.
young and old. You've been listening to a wonderful storyteller. And if you really liked it, if you've got a little money, doesn't have to be a lot. A little goes a long, long way, as they say. And you can afford it. Just pop it into the storyteller's hat, because right now they're not earning at all, so whatever you've got, it will be appreciated. And I'm sure you parents will have set a good example for your children. Oh, it's lovely. I'm only joking. But it will keep some of us going through this crisis. And those of you that are self-employed out there will know exactly what I mean, and you're probably exempt.